The German sniper commander couldn't believe what he was seeing through his scope, not the shot. He expected that. What shocked him was what the American didn't do next. June 23rd, 1944. Dawn breaking over Normandy. Hauptmann Klaus Adler watches through his experimental heated optic as an American sergeant holds perfect crosshairs on a young German lieutenant. The American's finger rests on the trigger. The wind has died. The rain has stopped. The shot is there. Clean, easy, certain. But the American doesn't take it. Klaus Adler's breath catches. Through the magnified circle of his scope, he sees the American's rifle shift. Not toward him, not toward any soldier. The crosshairs move to a German command post 800 meters distant. A more important target. A tactical choice over a personal kill. The American fires. A German officer falls. The entire battalion's attack collapses into chaos. And Klaus Adler understands. This American just passed up revenge to save his army. More than that, the young lieutenant the American spared is Ernst Adler, Klaus's younger brother. The boy Klaus volunteered to protect by becoming his spotter. The only family Klaus has left in this world. The American saw them together through his scope, recognized the bond, the protection, the brotherhood, and chose mercy. For 18 hours, two American boys from Montana and Brooklyn fought the entire 12th SS Panzer Division to a standstill. Not with superior weapons, not with advanced technology, but with candles, wax, cloth, and something the Germans never expected: the discipline to know when not to pull the trigger. What happened in that ruined farmhouse would haunt Klaus Adler for 30 years, until a letter arrived in Bavaria from the man he tried to kill. A letter that would make an old soldier weep, not for the war he lost, but for the humanity he thought war had destroyed. This is that story. If you or your father served in Europe during World War II, what you're about to hear will remind you what made the greatest generation truly great. Not the battles they won, the character they kept. Stay with us. 3 weeks earlier, June 2nd, 1944, 4 days after D-Day, Sergeant James Carson lies in the ruins of a stone barn outside Carrington. 28 years old, Montana-born, ranch-raised. The son of a man who taught him that tools only work when you respect them. Rifles, tractors, friendships, all the same principle. Maintain them or lose them. Jimmy Carson learned to shoot hunting elk in the Rockies. Learned patience waiting for deer in snow. Learned discipline from a father who never raised his voice but never needed to. A quiet man who believed actions mattered more than words. Who taught his son that being a man meant taking care of what you were responsible for. Your tools, your land, your people. Jimmy enlisted in December 1942, trained as a sniper at Fort Benning. Shipped to England in March 1944, landed on Omaha Beach on D+2, and for the last 3 weeks, he's been doing the hardest job the Army has. Watching men through a scope, deciding who lives, who dies, who goes home to their families. But right now, Jimmy Carson isn't thinking about any of that. He's staring at the body of Corporal David Miller. Davy, age 20, from Philadelphia. Jimmy's spotter, his partner, his friend, dead. A German sniper put a round through Davy's temple 4 hours ago. Clean shot, professional. The kind of shot Jimmy himself would have taken. Davy never had a chance. Except he did. And that's what's killing Jimmy Carson right now. Because Davy died trying to clear a fog scope. The weather had turned. Cold rain. The kind that fogs glass from the inside. Davy's optic went white just as a German counter-sniper team moved into position. Davy knew Jimmy couldn't see them. Knew they had seconds before the Germans spotted their position. So Davy raised his head, exposed himself, tried to get a clear sight picture to warn Jimmy. The German sniper was faster. Jimmy killed that German 30 seconds later, put a round through the man's scope and into his eye socket. But it didn't matter. Davy was already gone, bleeding out in French mud. His last words weren't a scream, weren't a prayer, just a whisper. Sorry, Sarge, should have maintained it better. 20 years old, dying, and apologizing for his equipment. That's what haunts Jimmy Carson as Captain Douglas Hayes walks into the barn. Hayes is 40, West Point, class of 1926. Texas-born, a professional soldier who's seen men die for 17 years and still hasn't figured out how to make it hurt less. Carson, Hayes says quietly, I'm sorry about Miller. Jimmy doesn't respond. Can't. His throat's too tight. I know you two were close, but I need you back on the line. Germans are massing for a counterattack. Intelligence says they're bringing up their best sniper hunter, Hauptmann Klaus Adler. They call him the Eagle. 47 confirmed kills on the Eastern Front. Jimmy looks up. When? Could be today, could be tomorrow. Weather's turning bad again. Storm coming, which means visibility drops to nothing, which means the Germans think they can move without us seeing them. They're wrong, Jimmy says. Hayes nods. That's what I'm counting on. I'm assigning you a new spotter. Kid just arrived from the replacement depot. Name's Robert Fletcher. Never been in combat. Never even hunted before the war. But he's all I've got. I'll train him. You've got maybe 6 hours before the storm hits. Carson, I need you to understand something. This sector is barely held. We've got one rifle company covering what should be a battalion's worth of line. If the Germans break through here, our whole flank collapses. You and your new spotter are the only eyes we have on the main approach. You hold, no matter what. Understand? Yes, sir. Hayes turns to leave. Stops. Carson, what happened to Miller wasn't your fault. I should have taught him better, about maintaining his gear, about the weather, about everything. You taught him what you could. War doesn't give us enough time to teach everything. You did your best. My best got him killed. Hayes has no answer for that, because they both know it's true. In war, your best sometimes isn't enough. People die anyway. Good people. Young people. People who apologize for their equipment as they bleed out in the mud. Hayes leaves, and Jimmy Carson sits alone with his rifle, his M1903A4 Springfield, the same rifle he's been carrying since Benning, the same scope he's maintained every single day for 16 months, wiping it clean, keeping it dry, treating it like the precision instrument it is, because his father taught him right. Tools work when you respect them, and Jimmy Carson respects his tools, which is why his scope never fogs, never fails, never gets him killed. He just wishes he'd hammered that lesson harder into Davy Miller. Private Robert Fletcher arrives an hour later, 22 years old, Brooklyn-born, the son of a hardware store owner, never fired a rifle before basic training, never killed anything bigger than a rat, nervous, eager, terrified, trying not to show any of it. Sergeant Carson, I'm your new spotter. Jimmy looks at him, sees Davy, sees every young soldier who ever walked into combat thinking they understood what was coming, knowing they didn't, couldn't, not until the first bullet snapped past their head, not until they saw what a bullet does to a human body, not until they understood that war isn't about courage. It's about what you do when courage runs out and all you have left is discipline. You know how to maintain a rifle scope? Jimmy asks. Bobby Fletcher blinks. Sir. Simple question, Private. Do you know how to keep a scope from fogging in wet weather? They didn't teach us that at Fort Dix. They should have. Sit down. For the next hour, Jimmy teaches Bobby Fletcher what he should have taught Davy Miller better. How condensation forms on cold glass when warm breath hits it. How to prevent it with a small candle flame. How to wipe a lens with wax cloth so it doesn't scratch or streak. How to use charcoal hand warmers to keep the metal housing warm enough that moisture doesn't freeze. Simple things, Boy Scout things, things that shouldn't matter in modern war, with precision equipment and advanced optics. Things that keep you alive when the weather turns and your enemy's technology fails. Bobby absorbs it all, asks good questions, reveals he actually knows something about tools and maintenance from the working in his father's hardware store. By the end of the hour, Jimmy realizes this kid might actually survive. If Jimmy can keep him alive long enough to learn. Why are you teaching me all this? Bobby asks. Instead of just how to shoot. Because shooting's the easy part, Jimmy says. Any fool can point a rifle and pull a trigger. The hard part is making sure your rifle works when you need it. The hard part is understanding that in war, the soldier who maintains his equipment better than the enemy usually wins. Not because he's braver, not because he's stronger, because he's more disciplined. That's what your father taught you. Jimmy nods. On the ranch in Montana, take care of your tools, They'll take care of you. Same with people, he used to say. Same with everything that matters. He sounds like a good man. He is. Was. I don't know. Haven't heard from home in 3 months. Mail's slow. They fall silent. Outside, the weather's changing. Dark clouds rolling in from the Atlantic. The kind of storm that turns battlefields into nightmares. Cold rain, freezing temperatures. The kind of weather where rifles jam, scopes fog, men lose fingers to frostbite. The kind of weather the Germans think will blind American snipers. Storm's coming, Bobby says, looking through the barn's shattered wall. Good, Jimmy replies. Let it come. June 23rd, 1944, 0400 hours. The storm hits. Freezing rain lashes sideways across the collapsed farmhouse, where Jimmy Carson and Bobby Fletcher have set up their position. Every drop feels like a needle of ice. The wind howls through broken rafters. Visibility dies to maybe 100 meters. Even that's optimistic. Jimmy lies prone in the ruins. His Brody helmet channels water off his face in steady streams. His uniform is soaked through, his hands are numb. But his rifle is dry, his scope is clear, and the small candle burning beside him, shielded from the wind by his cupped hand, keeps the optic just warm enough to prevent condensation. Next to him, Bobby Fletcher shivers, not entirely from cold. Fear plays a part. This is his first night in a combat position. His first time watching enemy territory through a scope. His first time understanding that somewhere out there, German soldiers are watching back, hunting him the same way he's hunting them. You okay? Jimmy whispers. Cold. Scared. But okay. Good. Stay scared. Fear keeps you sharp. It's when you stop being scared that you make mistakes. Were you scared? Your first time? Terrified. Still am. Every time I look through this scope, I'm scared I'll see something I'm not ready for. That I'll miss a shot that matters. That I'll make a mistake that gets someone killed. Bobby glances at him. Like Corporal Miller. Jimmy's jaw tightens. Yeah, like Davy. You think it was your fault? I think I should have made him practice scope maintenance more. Should have checked his gear better. Should have done 100 things I didn't do. Or maybe, Bobby says quietly, war just kills people, even when you do everything right. Jimmy doesn't answer, because Bobby's right. But accepting that means accepting that all the discipline, that all the training, all the maintenance in the world sometimes isn't enough. And Jimmy Carson can't accept that. Because if discipline doesn't matter, if doing everything right doesn't matter, then what's the point? Movement below. Through the rain-blurred scope, Jimmy spots figures moving along the road. German patrol, 8 men, moving cautiously through the storm, shoulders hunched against the cold. Bobby sees them too. Germans, you got a shot. Jimmy watches, waits, patient. One of the German soldiers stops, raises his rifle, tries to look through his scope. Even at 400 meters, Jimmy can see the problem. The German's optic is completely fogged, white, useless. The soldier lowers the rifle, wipes the scope with his gloved hand, raises it again, still fogged. Their scopes are dead, Jimmy whispers. The rain's too cold, condensation's forming inside the tubes, they're blind. But we're not. No, we're not. Jimmy centers his crosshairs on the German sniper, the man who's probably been sent out in this weather specifically to hunt American snipers. The man whose scope should be working, but isn't. Because German optical engineering, for all its precision and quality, wasn't designed for maintenance in the field. The seals are too tight. The internal coating's too delicate. Once moisture gets inside, it's finished. American scopes aren't better. They're just maintained better. Jimmy breathes in, exhales slowly. The rain hisses. The candle glows. His scope stays crystal clear. He squeezes the trigger. The crack of the rifle echoes across the storm, swallowed almost immediately by wind and rain. 400 meters away, the German sniper collapses into the mud. His rifle falls. His squad scatters, shouting in confusion. Firing blindly, their bullets go wide, hitting nothing, because they can't see where the shot came from, because their scopes are dead and the American scope is alive. Bobby watches through his own optic, trembling slightly. You got him. Yeah, he's not dead, he's moving, calling for help. Jimmy sees it too. The German sniper writhing in the mud. Not a clean kill. Gut shot. Painful. Slow. The man's calling for his friends. Begging. His voice carries even through the storm. Bobby shifts his rifle. Should we put him out of his misery? No. But he's suffering. And that's the German medic's job now, not ours. We took him out of the fight. That's all we're supposed to do. It doesn't seem right leaving him like that. Jimmy's grip tightens on his rifle. Memories of Davy, bleeding out, apologizing. Jimmy couldn't save him, couldn't do anything but watch. And now he's supposed to mercy kill an enemy, become the thing that killed his friend. We're not executioners, Jimmy says, voice tight. We're soldiers. There's a difference. Below, a German medic runs to the wounded sniper, drags him toward cover. The rest of the patrol retreats deeper into the hedge, abandoning their advance. One shot, 8 men turn back, because the Americans can see and the Germans cannot. Contact, a voice calls from behind them. A runner, crawling through the mud to their position. Young, maybe 19, breathing hard. Message from Captain Hayes. Go ahead. Germans are planning a major counterattack. Battalion strength, maybe more. Coming through this sector at dawn. Captain says you two are the only eyes we have on the approach. Says you need to hold this position for 18 hours minimum. Says reinforcements are coming, but won't arrive until tomorrow afternoon. 18 hours, just 2 men, against a battalion. In a storm that should make accurate shooting impossible. Holding a position the Germans desperately need to take. Understood, Jimmy says. We'll hold. The runner nods, starts to crawl away, stops. One more thing. Intelligence reports the Germans are bringing up their best counter-sniper team. Hauptmann Klaus Adler. They call him the Eagle. He's killed 12 of our boys in the last month. Jimmy's blood goes cold. When was his last kill? 3 weeks ago, June 2nd, outside Carentan. Our sniper never saw him coming. Clean headshot. June 2nd, the day Davy died. The place Davy died. Did intelligence identify the American casualty? Jimmy asks, already knowing the answer. Corporal David Miller. Bobby looks at Jimmy, sees the expression on his face. Understands. Adler killed Davy. Maybe, probably, doesn't matter. It matters to you. What matters, Jimmy says slowly, is the mission. Hold this position. Slow the German advance. Keep our lines from collapsing. That's what matters, not revenge. But Bobby can see the truth. It matters. Of course it matters. The man who killed Jimmy's best friend is coming, and Jimmy will have a choice. Take the personal shot, or take the tactical one. What if you see him, Bobby asks. What if you have him in your scope? Then I'll do my job. Which job, sniper or friend? Jimmy doesn't answer, because he doesn't know. And somewhere out there in the freezing rain, Klaus Adler is coming. The Eagle, 47 kills. Maybe 48 if he was the one who shot Davy. Coming to hunt the Americans who can somehow see through a storm that blinds everyone else. Coming to learn their secret, or kill them trying. The rain intensifies, the wind shifts, the candle flickers but holds. And 2 American soldiers wait in the ruins, watching, maintaining their equipment, keeping their scopes clear while the Germans stumble blind. Discipline against technology, patience against precision. And somewhere in the dark, an enemy approaches who might make Jimmy Carson choose between the mission that keeps men alive and the revenge that keeps ghosts quiet. The storm is just beginning. 800 hours. The rain has not stopped. If anything, it has gotten worse. Freezing sleet now mixed with the downpour, turning the Norman countryside into a landscape of ice and mud. Visibility is maybe 50 meters. The hedgerows are dark shadows. The roads are rivers. And through this hell, a staff car approaches from the German rear. Hauptmann Klaus Adler sits in the back seat watching the storm through rain-streaked windows. 35 years old, Bavarian-born, a school teacher before the war. He taught literature and history to children who should have grown up in peace. Instead, he taught them under a regime that turned education into indoctrination. That turned his country into a machine designed for conquest. Klaus never wanted to be a soldier, But when the war came to the Eastern Front, when his younger brother Ernst received draft papers in 1943, Klaus made a choice. He volunteered, became a sniper, learned to kill with precision and distance. All so he could request Ernst as his spotter. All so he could protect the only family he had left. 3 years of war have carved lines into Klaus's face. A scar runs from his left temple to his jaw. A souvenir from Stalingrad. A Russian sniper's bullet that should have killed him, but only marked him. He wears it like a brand, a reminder that death is patient, that luck runs out, that every day alive is borrowed time. Next to him sits Lieutenant Ernst Adler, 24 years old, younger by 11 years, still carrying the softness of civilian life in his face. Ernst never wanted to be a soldier either, wanted to be a musician, played violin before the war. Now he carries a rifle and binoculars and tries not to think about the music he'll never make. They say the Americans have magic optics, Ernst says, reading from an intelligence briefing. Officers are reporting accurate sniper fire in weather conditions that should make it impossible. They want to know how the Americans are doing it. Klaus takes the briefing, scans it. His professional eye catches the details. Shot patterns, ranges, weather conditions, and he understands immediately. Not magic, he says quietly. Maintenance. What? The Americans are maintaining their scopes in the field, preventing condensation, keeping them warm enough to function. Our scopes are better quality, better engineering, but they're sealed too tightly. Once moisture gets inside, they're finished. The Americans have solved the problem we created with our own precision. Ernst looks out at the rain, at the German soldiers struggling with fogged optics, at rifles being abandoned for iron sights because the scopes are useless. So we lost the technological advantage. We never had it, Klaus says. We had better equipment, but they have better discipline. In war, discipline beats equipment every time. The car stops at a forward command post, a dugout reinforced with timber and sandbags. Inside, German officers huddle around maps, their faces tight with frustration. An Oberstleutnant looks up as Klaus enters. Relief flashes across his face. Adler, finally, we need you to eliminate the American snipers holding the Bretteville approach. They're killing our men with impunity. Every patrol we send comes back blind or doesn't come back at all. Klaus studies the map, marks where American fire has been reported. The pattern is clear. 2 shooters, maybe 3, operating from elevated positions with clear fields of fire. Disciplined, patient, professional. What assets can you give me? Klaus asks. Anything you need. I need the experimental heated scope, the one from Berlin, battery-powered. The Oberstleutnant hesitates. That equipment is expensive, prototype only. There are only 3 in the entire Army group. Then I need one of them, because fighting American snipers with fogged optics is suicide. And you're asking me to commit suicide for what pride give me the heated scope, or I can't guarantee results. The officer relents, nods. Within an hour, a wooden crate arrives. Inside, carefully packed, is a ZF-39 scope, modified with heating elements, powered by a battery pack. Experimental, untested in real combat, but it's the only chance Klaus has to match the Americans at their own game. He mounts it to his Carabiner 98K, tests the heating element. It works. The battery gives maybe 4 hours of operation in cold weather. Maybe less in this storm, but 4 hours might be enough. Ernst watches his brother work, sees the careful precision, the methodical checking of every component, and he understands that Klaus is worried, really worried, because Klaus only gets this careful when he thinks the odds are against him. Brother, Ernst says quietly, if this is too dangerous, tell them you need more time, more intelligence, more support. Klaus looks at him, smiles sadly, and let them send someone else, someone who might get you killed because they're not good enough. No, we do this together. Like always, you watch my back, I watch yours. That's how we survive. They move forward through the storm. 2 brothers, enemy soldiers, hunters who are also hunted, moving toward a farmhouse where 2 Americans wait with candles and wax cloth and the discipline their fathers taught them. Moving toward a confrontation that will define what kind of men they all are. Jimmy Carson sees them coming. Through his scope, crystal clear, despite the rain, he watches two German soldiers approach from the east, moving carefully, professionally, not like the patrols he's been shooting. These men know what they're doing. Contact, he whispers to Bobby. 200 meters, 11 o'clock. Two soldiers, moving tactical. Bobby shifts his position, finds them in his scope. Officers, maybe, probably. Look at how they're moving, covering each other, checking angles. These aren't regular infantry. Think it's him, the eagle. Jimmy studies the taller figure. Can't see the face clearly through the rain. But something about the movement, the confidence, the way the man scans the terrain like he's reading a book. Yeah, Jimmy says, I think so. His finger moves to the trigger. Range is good. Wind is manageable. The shot is there. One squeeze and Klaus Adler dies. The man who maybe killed Davy. The man who's killed 47 Allied soldiers. The man who's here to kill Jimmy and Bobby. The shot is right there. But something makes Jimmy hesitate. Professional instinct. The recognition that this isn't a regular soldier. This is another sniper, another hunter. And killing him now at this range without understanding his capabilities might be a mistake. Because if Jimmy misses Adler, we'll know exactly where he is. And Jimmy has a feeling Adler doesn't miss often. Why aren't you shooting? Bobby whispers. Because I'm thinking. About what? About whether killing him now is smarter than waiting to see what he does. Whether revenge matters more than tactics. Whether I'm a good enough shot in this weather to guarantee the hit. Bobby watches the Germans take cover behind a stone wall, disappear from view. The moment passes. The shot is gone. You let him go, Bobby says. Not an accusation, just a statement. For now, he'll show himself again. And when he does, I'll be ready. But Jimmy knows the truth. He hesitated because some part of him wants this to be fair. Wants to face Adler as an equal. Sniper against sniper. Not an ambush. Not a surprise shot from hiding. A real duel between professionals. Which is stupid, romantic, dangerous. Everything a good sniper shouldn't be. But Jimmy Carson is still human. Still carrying Davy's death like a weight. Still needing to prove that he's good enough to beat the man who might have killed his friend. And you can't prove that with a cheap shot. You prove it by being better when it matters most. Klaus Adler crouches behind the stone wall, studying the farmhouse through his heated scope. The battery is working. The optic is clear. He can see details the other German soldiers can't. Broken rafters, shattered windows, potential firing positions. And there, third floor, collapsed section of roof, a faint shimmer that might be heat signature. Might be nothing. But Klaus has been doing this long enough to trust his instincts. Americans, two of them, watching, waiting. I see their position, he whispers to Ernst. Third floor of the farmhouse, northeast corner. Can you take the shot? Not yet. Too far, too much wind, and they're well concealed. If I miss, they'll know I have working optics. They'll change tactics. Better to observe, learn their patterns. Wait for them to make a mistake. And if they don't make mistakes, Klaus smiles grimly, then we're fighting someone competent, which makes this interesting. He settles in to wait. Professional patience, the same patience that kept him alive on the Eastern Front. The same patience that made him one of the most effective snipers in the Wehrmacht. Not because he was the best shot, but because he was the most disciplined, the most willing to wait for the perfect moment. Hours pass, the storm continues. Both sides watch. Wait, neither willing to expose themselves without certainty. And then Klaus sees it. Movement in the farmhouse, a figure shifting position. Just for a second, but enough. He raises his rifle, centers the crosshairs. The heated scope gives him perfect clarity. He can see the American's helmet, the outline of his shoulder. He fires. The bullet impacts stone 6 inches from where Jimmy's head was, a heartbeat before. Chips of masonry explode. Bobby jerks in surprise. Jimmy drops flat, heart hammering. Contact, return fire. Jimmy rolls to a new position. Finds the muzzle flash location. Church steeple, 600 meters. Perfect sniper position. He returns fire. 3 quick shots. Suppression. Making the German duck. buying time, but Klaus Adler doesn't duck. He shifts slightly, fires again. This round passes so close to Bobby that the young private feels the air displacement against his cheek. Jesus, he can see us. His scope is working. Jimmy understands immediately. Heated optic, battery-powered, the experimental equipment intelligence warned about. Adler has the technological edge now. The Americans' advantage is gone. New position, Jimmy shouts. Move now. They crawl through the ruined building as German fire intensifies. Not just Adler now, other soldiers joining in, concentrating fire on the farmhouse. Bullets tear through rotten wood, shatter remaining windows. The entire structure groans. Jimmy and Bobby reach the back wall. Exposed staircase. Dangerous, but staying is suicide. Go, Jimmy pushes Bobby toward the stairs. I'll cover. Bobby runs. Bullets chase him. One catches his pack, spinning him sideways. He stumbles, but doesn't fall. Reaches the ground floor. Safety. Jimmy follows. Halfway down, the staircase collapses. He falls, lands hard. Pain shoots through his left ankle. He rolls, comes up limping. Bobby grabs him, pulls him toward the door. Behind them, the farmhouse takes a mortar round. Probably just harassment fire. But the timing is perfect. The explosion covers their escape, throws debris everywhere, creates a screen of dust and smoke. They run, limping, gasping, across open ground toward the barn, ruins 200 meters east. Bullets snap past. Too close. Too many. The Germans have reinforcements. A whole squad opening up. Bobby goes down. Jimmy's heart stops. But the kid is moving. Not hit, just tripped in the mud. Jimmy hauls him up. They stagger into the barn, collapse behind a stone wall, breathing hard, hands shaking. You hit, Jimmy gasps. No, you twisted ankle, I'll live. Your candle. Bobby checks. The small flame is out, extinguished during the run. Without it, his scope will fog within minutes. It's dead. Light another one. Use my body to block the wind. Bobby's hands shake as he tries to strike a match. Once, twice, 3 times. Finally it catches. He lights a fresh candle, cups it, positions it near his scope mount. Jimmy watches the farmhouse. Through his own scope still clear, he sees German soldiers moving forward, investigating, looking for bodies. And there in the church steeple, Klaus Adler, watching through his heated optic. Their eyes meet across 600 meters. 2 professionals, 2 hunters, both understanding what just happened. The first engagement, the opening move. Both survived, both learned something about the other. Klaus Adler raises his hand, brief gesture, not surrender, acknowledgement, respect. One sniper to another. Jimmy doesn't return the gesture. Can't, because somewhere in his mind, this man might have killed Davy. And respect feels like betrayal, but he doesn't fire either, because the shot is too far, too risky, and wasting ammunition on pride is how you die. That was close, Bobby whispers. His voice shakes, adrenaline crash setting in. Too close, he's good. Better than I expected. Can we beat him? Jimmy thinks about that. About the heated scope, about Adler's patience and precision, about the fact that the German now has the same visual advantage Jimmy had. Maybe better. I don't know, he says honestly, but we're going to try applying. The rain continues, both sides regroup, both sides reassess. And in the mud and cold of Normandy, 2 sets of brothers prepare for a battle that will test more than shooting skills. It will test character, values, the question of what matters when everything is on the line. 1400 hours. The storm shows no sign of breaking. If anything, it has intensified. Wind gusting to 40 miles per hour. Rain so thick it's almost solid. Visibility down to maybe 30 meters. Jimmy and Bobby huddle in the barn ruins. They've fortified their position as best they can. Stacked stones for better cover. Cleared firing lanes. Positioned their candles where the wind can't reach them. Methodical. Disciplined. Doing what they can with what they have. Bobby's shoulder wound is superficial. A graze from a ricochet during the farmhouse escape. Jimmy's ankle is swelling. He can walk on it, but running is out. They're hurt, tired, cold to the bone, and they have 15 more hours to hold this position. Tell me about Montana, Bobby says suddenly. Jimmy looks at him. Why? Because I need something to think about besides freezing to death. And because if we die here, I want to know what I'm dying with you for. Fair enough. Jimmy shifts position, keeps his scope on the German lines, talks while he watches. Kalispell, small town, mountains all around. My father ran a ranch, cattle mostly, some horses, hard work, long winters, but beautiful. You ever seen the Rockies in winter snow so white it hurts your eyes? Air so clean it feels like drinking pure water. Sounds nice. It is. My father taught me everything on that ranch, how to shoot, how to track, how to fix what breaks. He used to say a man who can't maintain his own equipment isn't much of a man. Sounds harsh, but he was right. Discipline matters. Taking care of things matters. Doing the job right the first time matters. My pop said the same thing about the hardware store, every tool in its place, every customer treated right. Honest work for honest pay. Jimmy nods. Different work, same values. Think we'll make it back to Montana and Brooklyn. I don't know, war doesn't make promises, but I know we're going to do everything right, maintain our equipment, follow our training, take care of each other. After that, it's up to Mo or luck or whatever decides these things. Bobby is quiet for a moment. Then, Sergeant, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why didn't you shoot that German officer Adler? You had him. I saw it. Clean shot. But you hesitated. Jimmy doesn't answer immediately, watches the rain, thinks about Davy, about revenge, about the difference between being a soldier and being a killer. Because he finally says, I wanted to make sure, wanted to be certain, and maybe because some part of me wants this to be fair. Sniper against sniper, not an ambush. Stupid probably, but that's the truth. It's not stupid, Bobby says. It's human. Human gets you killed in war. Maybe, but without it, what are we fighting for? Jimmy doesn't have an answer for that, because Bobby's right. They're fighting to protect human values, freedom, dignity, the right to live without tyranny. And if they lose their own humanity in that fight, what's the point of winning movement? German patrol advancing through the hedge. 6 men, spread out, tactical. Moving toward the barn. Contact, Jimmy whispers. Get ready. They engage, carefully, precisely. Each shot counts because ammunition is limited. Each exposure is calculated because one mistake means death. This isn't Hollywood. No dramatic shootouts, just cold professionals doing cold math. Angles, distances, wind, rain, probability. Jimmy drops 2 Germans. Bobby gets 1. The others retreat, dragging their wounded, calling for support. And somewhere behind them, Klaus Adler watches, learning, understanding that these Americans are not amateurs, not lucky. They're skilled, disciplined, dangerous. He adjusts his assessment. These men will not be easy to kill. This will require patience, strategy, and maybe a willingness to do something he's been avoiding. Something that will expose Ernst to danger. Because to kill the Americans, Klaus will need to use his brother as bait. Send Ernst to a forward position to draw fire. And Klaus hates that idea more than anything. But he's running out of options. The battery on his heated scope is dying. Maybe 2 hours left. And in 2 hours, he'll be blind like every other German in this storm. Unless he ends this now. He looks at Ernst, his younger brother, the musician who should never have been a soldier. And Klaus makes a decision he'll regret for the rest of his life. Ernst, I need you to move forward. Draw their fire. Give me a muzzle flash to target. Ernst's face goes pale. You want me to be bait? I want you to help me end this. It's dangerous, I know, but I'll cover you, I promise. I won't let anything happen to you. You can't promise that. I can try. And I need you to trust me, like always. Can you do that? Ernst looks at his older brother, the man who raised him after their parents died, the man who volunteered for war to protect him, the man who's kept him alive for 3 years through hell. And Ernst nods, because what else can he do? They're in this together, brothers. Until the end, they prepare for the next phase. Germans on one side, Americans on the other, both willing to sacrifice, both trying to protect, both trapped in a war that cares nothing for their intentions. And the storm rages on. Many of you watching served in Europe. You know what this feels like. The cold, the fear, the weight of depending on your equipment and your training and the man beside you. If you remember learning these lessons about discipline and brotherhood, share your story in the comments. Your generation understands what made this possible, what made victory possible. Not superior weapons, superior character. The rain hammers down, night is coming, and with it, the most difficult test these four men will face. Not of shooting skill, of humanity under pressure, of what they're willing to sacrifice and what they refuse to lose. The storm is far from over. 2,100 hours, full darkness has fallen over Normandy. The storm has not relented. Rain mixed with sleet hammers the landscape, temperature dropping toward freezing. The kind of night where men die from exposure as much as from bullets. Jimmy Carson and Bobby Fletcher have been in position for 17 hours. No sleep, no hot food, just cold rations and colder water. Their bodies are shutting down. Hypothermia creeping in at the edges, fingers going numb, thoughts getting slower. Reaction time degrading, but their scopes are still clear. Their candles still burning, their discipline still holding. Through the darkness movement, German infantry advancing under cover of the storm. Not a patrol this time, a full platoon, maybe 40 men, spread across a front 200 meters wide. This is it, the attack Captain Hayes warned about. The push that will either break through American lines or shatter against two rifles and two disciplined men. Contact, Jimmy whispers, voice hoarse from cold. Multiple targets, all sectors. I see them, Bobby replies. His hands shake, not just from fear now, from exhaustion, from the physical toll of 17 hours in freezing rain. But he keeps his scope steady, keeps his breathing controlled, does what Jimmy taught him. They open fire, measured shots, not rapid. Each round counts. Each muzzle flash risks giving away their position. But they have no choice. This is what they're here for. Hold the line, slow the advance, buy time for reinforcements. Germans fall, others scatter, seek cover, return fire blindly because their optics are useless in the dark and rain. Bullets tear through the barn ruins, ricochet off stone. The sound is deafening, terrifying, the kind of sound that makes men break and run. But Jimmy and Bobby hold. They've come too far to break now. Jimmy drops 3 Germans. Bobby gets 2 more. A third German wounded crying out in the darkness. The advance falters, stops. Officers shouting orders, trying to reorganize, trying to figure out where the fire is coming from. And then the MG-42 opens up. The German machine gun finds their general position. Not precise, but close enough. Hundreds of rounds per minute tearing through the barn. Stone chips flying, wood splintering. The entire structure shaking under the onslaught. "Get down," Jimmy shouts. They flatten against the ground, hands over heads. The world reduced to noise and terror and flying debris. The MG-42 traversed back and forth, methodical, professional. Whoever is operating that gun knows their job. Something hot slices across Bobby's left shoulder. He cries out, not loud, just a gasp of pain. But Jimmy hears it. "You hit." "Yeah, shoulder, not bad. I can still shoot." Jimmy risks a look. Blood soaking through Bobby's jacket. Not arterial, not immediately life-threatening, but bleeding, needs pressure, needs bandaging, needs attention now or it gets worse. And suddenly Jimmy is back in that barn 3 weeks ago, watching Davy bleed out, watching a young soldier die because the mission came first, because Jimmy put the tactical situation ahead of the human one. Not Bobby, not this kid who trusted him, who learned from him, who became the brother Jimmy lost. "We're moving," Jimmy says. "What we can't, we have to hold this position." "Forget the position. You're bleeding. We need to stop it before you go into shock." "Sarge, the mission." "The mission," Jimmy says quietly, "can go to hell. I let Davy die because I put the mission first. I'm not doing that again. We're getting you out of here. Now." Bobby stares at him, understanding what this means. that Jimmy is choosing him over orders, over duty, over everything they were supposed to be doing. And Bobby realizes this is the moment Jimmy has been heading toward since Davy died. The moment where he proves to himself that people matter more than objectives. Okay, Bobby whispers. Okay, let's go. They crawl toward the back of the barn. Moving between bursts of machine gun fire, the Germans are advancing again, using the MG-42 suppression to push forward. Voices getting closer, boots splashing through mud. Jimmy reaches the drainage ditch behind the barn, helps Bobby slide down into it. The ditch is half full of icy water. They sink to their waists. The cold is shocking, breath stealing. But it provides cover, concealment, a route to safety. Can you move, Jimmy asks. Yeah, it hurts like hell, but I can move. Then move east, toward the mill house. 200 meters. I'll cover our withdrawal. They start moving, slow, careful. Jimmy turns every few meters, watches their back trail, his M1911 pistol drawn. If Germans follow them into this ditch, it will be close quarters. Brutal, but Jimmy is ready for that. Behind them, German voices at the barn, discovering it's empty. Confusion, anger. Someone shouting orders, flashlights sweeping the area. But Jimmy and Bobby are already 50 meters away, lost in darkness and rain, moving toward the old mill house that overlooks the main German assembly areas, the last viable position. The final place they can make a stand, if they can reach it. Bobby stumbles, goes to one knee in the freezing water. Jimmy catches him, feels the kid shaking, shock setting in, blood loss catching up. They need to stop, dress the wound properly. But stopping now means the Germans find them. Stay with me, Bobby. Almost there. I'm okay, just cold. So cold. I know, me too. But we're going to make it. You and me, together, like Montana and Brooklyn should. Bobby manages a weak smile. That doesn't even make sense. Doesn't have to. Just has to be true. They reach the mill house. It's in better shape than the barn. Stone walls mostly intact. A collapsed section on the north side that provides both cover and a firing position. And most importantly, it overlooks the road where German reinforcements have been assembling all day. Jimmy gets Bobby inside, sits him against a wall, pulls out his first aid kit, the one he's been carrying since Benning, the one he never had a chance to use on Davy. He cuts away Bobby's jacket. The wound is a deep graze. Ugly. Painful. But the bullet didn't lodge. Clean entry and exit. That's good. Less chance of infection, less chance of complications. Jimmy packs it with sulfa powder. Bandages it tight. Bobby hisses through his teeth, but doesn't cry out. Tough kid, Brooklyn tough. The kind of tough that comes from hardship, not from pretending. You did good, Jimmy says. Real good. 17 hours under fire. Most men would have broken. Most men had a better teacher. Don't give me that. This was all you, your discipline, your guts. I just showed you how to clean a scope. You showed me more than that, Sarge. You showed me what it means to be a man, to take care of your people, to do the right thing even when it's hard. Jimmy's throat tightens. He thinks about his father, about the ranch in Montana, about the lessons learned fixing tractors and mending fences. Simple lessons that turn out to be the only ones that matter. Take care of your tools, take care of your people, do the job right, and know when the home isn't worth a life. Rest, Jimmy says. I'll watch. He moves to the firing position, sets up his rifle, lights a fresh candle, his second to last. After this one burns out, he has maybe 2 hours of scope operation left. Then he'll be as blind as the Germans, but 2 hours might be enough. Through his scope, he surveys the German positions, and what he sees makes his blood run cold. Dozens of soldiers, vehicles, artillery pieces being positioned. This isn't a platoon-level attack. This is battalion strength. Maybe more. A massive push designed to break through the American lines and roll up the entire division flank. And all that stands between this force and success is one injured sniper and one exhausted sergeant with a candle. The odds are impossible. The situation is hopeless. Any rational person would withdraw. Fall back to American lines, report what they've seen, and let someone else deal with it. But Jimmy Carson isn't any rational person. He's a man who just chose his friend over his mission. And having made that choice, he's not about to waste it by running now. Bobby deserves better. Davy's memory deserves better. And every American soldier sleeping in foxholes behind this position deserves men who won't quit. So Jimmy doesn't quit. He settles in behind his scope, watches, waits, and prepares to do the only thing he knows how to do, his job. Across the battlefield, Klaus Adler crouches in the ruins of a stone church. His heated scope battery is dead, died 20 minutes ago. Now he's as blind as every other German in this storm. The technological advantage is gone. He's back to depending on skill and luck and the hope that the Americans are just as blind. But he knows better. Those Americans have been maintaining their equipment all day, using primitive methods that work better than German engineering. They can still see, which means they're still dangerous. Ernst sits next to him, shivering, wet, miserable. They've been hunting the Americans for 14 hours, following them from position to position, never quite catching them, never quite getting the killing shot. And now Ernst is at the end of his endurance. Brother, Ernst says quietly, I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry, but I'm done. Klaus looks at him, sees the truth. Ernst isn't a soldier, never was. He's a musician forced into uniform, a gentle soul trapped in brutal circumstances. And Klaus has been asking too much of him, risking too much, all to hunt two Americans who have done nothing except their duty. It's okay, Klaus says. We're done. The battery is dead anyway. Without the scope, I can't compete with them. They won. We lost. That's how war works sometimes. Will they court-martial you? Maybe. Probably not. Too many other problems. The Americans are coming. Everyone knows it. This whole front is collapsing. Whether I kill two snipers or not won't change that. Relief floods Ernst's face. So we can pull back. Get out of this rain. Klaus nods, starts to stand, and then he sees it. Through the darkness and rain, a faint glow, small, distant, coming from the direction of the old mill house. A candle, the Americans' candle, still burning, still maintaining their scope. And Klaus understands. They're still out there, still watching, still doing their job despite everything, despite the cold and exhaustion and impossible odds. Because that's what discipline looks like. That's what professional soldiers do. And Klaus feels something he hasn't felt in 3 years of war. Respect. Pure, uncomplicated respect for an enemy who refuses to quit. Wait, he tells Ernst. I need to see something. He raises his rifle. No scope now, just iron sights. Useless at this range in this weather. But he looks anyway, tries to make out details. And through a brief gap in the rain, he sees movement. A figure at the mill house. Just for a second. But enough. The American sergeant. Still there. Still watching. And next to him, the young spotter. The one who got hit during the firefight. They're both still in position. They should have withdrawn. Should have fallen back. Any sane commander would have ordered it. But they stayed because something mattered more than safety, more than survival. The mission. Or maybe each other. Klaus isn't sure which. Maybe both. He lowers his rifle, makes a decision, one that will haunt him, one that will stay with him for 30 years. Ernst, you see that mill house? Yes. The Americans are there. I'm going to signal the attack to bypass it. We'll push through to the south, let them have their position. Why him? Because a Klaus says slowly they earned it. They fought well, they beat us fairly, and I'm not going to kill brave men just because my pride is hurt. The officers will be angry. Let them be angry. I'm tired of killing people who deserve to live. Ernst stares at his brother, understanding that something changed tonight, something fundamental. The professional sniper who killed 47 men just decided one American sergeant and his spotter are worth more alive than dead. Not because they're not enemies, but because they're the kind of enemies that remind you why honor matters, why rules exist, why some things are sacred even in war. Klaus signals the German commanders, redirects the attack. The massive push that was supposed to go through the mill house sector shifts south. Hundreds of soldiers, dozens of vehicles, all moving away from two Americans who will never know how close they came to being overrun. Never know that a German officer chose mercy, just like they chose duty. The attack goes forward. but not through Jimmy Carson's sector. The American lines bend, but don't break. Reinforcements arrive at dawn. The German offensive is contained, stopped, pushed back. And in the millhouse, Jimmy watches through his scope as the German forces pull away. Confused, grateful, not understanding why. Just knowing that somehow impossibly he and Bobby survived the night. They're leaving, Bobby whispers. Why are they leaving? I don't know, Jimmy says. Maybe our artillery scared them. Maybe they found a better route. Maybe God decided we deserved a break. Or maybe, Bobby says, someone on their side made the same choice you made. Put people ahead of mission. Jimmy thinks about that, about Klaus Adler, about the German sniper who could have killed them but didn't. And he wonders if Bobby is right. If somewhere in the darkness an enemy chose humanity over duty, he'll never know for sure, but he hopes it's true because it would mean something, would mean that even in war, even in the worst circumstances, decent men can still recognize each other across battle lines, can still choose to let each other live. Dawn breaks on June 24th. The storm finally passes. Weak sunlight filters through breaking clouds, and two American soldiers, exhausted and wounded but alive, watch the day begin. Captain Hayes arrives an hour later with reinforcements, finds Jimmy and Bobby still at their post, still watching, still doing their job even though the battle is over. Carson, Hayes says quietly. Report. Held the position, sir. German attack diverted south. Our sector intact. I heard you abandoned the barn position. Withdrew under fire. Yes, sir. Private Fletcher was wounded, required immediate medical attention. I made the call. Hayes looks at Bobby's bandaged shoulder, at the blood-soaked jacket, at the pale face and shaking hands. Then back at Jimmy. Good call, Sergeant. A position is just dirt. A soldier is irreplaceable, especially a good one. Relief floods Jimmy's face. He made the right choice. Not the tactical choice, the human choice. And it was right. One more thing, Hayes says. Intelligence reports the German sniper commander Klaus Adler was in this sector last night. We believe he directed the attack away from your position deliberately. We don't know why, but I wanted you to know. The man who might have killed Corporal Miller let you live. Jimmy absorbs that, thinks about the moment he didn't shoot Adler, the hesitation, the professional respect. And he understands that somewhere in the darkness, two snipers made the same choice, both putting humanity ahead of hatred. I had a shot at him yesterday, Jimmy says. Didn't take it. Why not? Wasn't sure. Wanted to be certain. And maybe because some part of me knew he was like me, just a soldier doing his job, trying to protect his spotter, his brother. Hayes nods. The enemy isn't always evil, Carson. Sometimes they're just men on the wrong side. The tragedy of war is we still have to kill them, but we don't have to hate them. No, sir, we don't. Hayes leaves. The relief force takes over the position. Jimmy and Bobby are evacuated to a field hospital. Bobby's wound is treated properly. Jimmy's ankle is wrapped. They're given hot food, dry clothes, and 12 hours of uninterrupted sleep. And when they wake up, the war has moved on. The German lines have collapsed. The Allied advance continues. Normandy is being liberated. Victory is coming. Slow, bloody, expensive, but coming. Jimmy and Bobby return to duty a week later. They're assigned to train new snipers, teaching the same lessons Jimmy's father taught him. Maintain your equipment. Take care of your people. Know what matters and what doesn't. They serve together for the rest of the war. Fight through France, into Germany. See things that will haunt them forever. Do things they'll spend decades trying to forget. But they survive, both of them. And when the war ends in May 1945, they go home. Jimmy to Montana, Bobby to Brooklyn, both carrying memories, both carrying scars, both carrying the knowledge that they made choices that mattered. The years pass. Jimmy runs his family ranch, marries, has children, lives the quiet life his father lived. Bobby takes over his father's hardware store, marries his childhood sweetheart, raises a family in Brooklyn. They write letters, visit when they can, stay brothers even though the war is over. And neither one speaks much about Normandy, about the storm, about the night they held a position against impossible odds. It's private, sacred. The kind of experience you don't share with people who weren't there. 30 years pass. 1974. Jimmy Carson is 58 years old now. His father died 5 years ago. Jimmy runs the ranch alone. His children are grown, moved away. He sees Bobby once a year. They sit on the porch, drink coffee, talk about everything except the war, until the letter arrives. Postmarked Bavaria, Germany, handwriting shaky, old. The handwriting of a man at the end of his life. Jimmy opens it with trembling hands, begins to read, and as he reads, tears stream down his face. Not from sadness, from something else. Something he doesn't have words for. The letter is from Klaus Adler, the Eagle, the German sniper who hunted him for one terrible night in June 19 and the words on that page change everything Jimmy thought he understood about that night. Klaus writes about watching through his scope, seeing Jimmy's crosshairs on Ernst, seeing the American sergeant make a choice, shift his aim, take the tactical shot instead of the revenge shot, spare a young German lieutenant who was someone's brother, someone's son, someone worth saving. Klaus writes about his own choice, to redirect the attack, to let the Americans live, not because of weakness, because of respect, professional to professional. One man who understood protection, recognizing it in another. And Klaus writes about Ernst, who survived the war, who became a teacher, who has 3 children now. 3 lives that exist because an American sergeant chose mercy over revenge, chose the mission over personal satisfaction, chose humanity over hatred. The letter ends with a simple line. You defeated me, Sergeant Carson, not with bullets, with character. For that I will be grateful until I die. Your enemy and your admirer, Klaus Adler. Included with the letter is a photograph. Ernst Adler and his 3 children. A boy age 8, a girl age 6, another boy age 4, smiling, alive, living proof that choices matter, that mercy has power, that one moment of humanity can ripple forward for generations. Jimmy shows the letter to Bobby when he visits that summer. Bobby reads it, cries too, and they understand together that everything they went through, all the cold and fear and pain, led to this moment, this knowledge that they did something right, something that mattered. Should we write back, Bobby asks. Yeah, Jimmy says, we should. They compose a letter together, inviting Klaus to visit, to meet, to talk about that night as old men instead of young soldiers, to find whatever closure or peace or understanding might still be possible. Klaus writes back, accepts, and in the fall of 1975, 3 old soldiers meet in Montana. Jimmy Carson, Bobby Fletcher, and Klaus Adler. Enemy snipers who became, if not friends, then something close. Men who recognize in each other the scars and memories and choices that define a life. Ernst comes too, brings his children. And for 3 days, Germans and Americans sit together. Share stories, share meals, share the complicated truth that war makes enemies of good men and sometimes rarely lets them find each other again after. On the last day, Klaus asks to see Jimmy's rifle, the M1903A4 that killed so many German soldiers. That held a position against impossible odds. That represents everything the Americans did right. Jimmy brings it from the house, still maintained perfectly, still in working order, still with the small brass hook he soldered to the stock for holding a candle. Klaus examines it, runs his fingers over the hook, and he begins to cry, because he understands, finally, completely, why Germany lost the war, not because of American weapons, because of American character, the discipline to maintain equipment with a candle and wax cloth, the humanity to spare an enemy's brother, the values that said people matter more than victory. Oh, Klaus says, holding the rifle, this is why we lost, not because it shoots straighter than our rifles, because the man who carries it cares more about doing things right than doing things easily. My country forgot that character matters. That discipline comes from within, not from orders. That you can't engineer your way past basic human decency. He hands the rifle back, salutes. And Jimmy understands that this moment is the real end of the war, not when the treaties were signed and now, when old enemies can stand together and acknowledge that they were both trying to protect something, both trying to be good soldiers, both trying to survive with honor. Klaus Adler dies 6 months later. Cancer. He writes one final letter to Jimmy before the end. Thanks him again. Says he lived 30 extra years because an American chose mercy. Says his brother's children will carry forward the ripple of that choice. Says history will remember the bombs and battles, but he will remember the candle that defeated German engineering. And he says he's grateful for the war that brought them together, for the storm that tested them, for the choices they made that proved men can be enemies without being evil. Jimmy keeps that letter, keeps it with his rifle, keeps it as proof that even in the darkest moments, humanity survives. That discipline defeats technology, that mercy defeats hatred, that values defeat everything else. He's 90 now, still on the ranch, still maintaining his tools, still teaching his grandchildren the lessons his father taught him. Take care of what matters, do the job right, and know that sometimes the hardest choice is the right choice. Bobby visits every year. They're both old men now, both carrying decades of memories, both knowing they did something in that storm that mattered. Not because they killed Germans, because they stayed human while doing it. Sometimes they talk about Klaus, about Ernst, about 3 German children who exist because an American chose mission over revenge, about the ripple effect of small mercies in a world of violence. And sometimes they just sit. 2 old soldiers, brothers in every way that matters, watching the Montana sunset, grateful for every day, grateful for each other, grateful that they learned what the greatest generation understood instinctively, that wars are won by superior values, not superior weapons, that discipline beats technology, that taking care of your people matters more than following orders, and that the measure of a man isn't how many enemies he kills, but what he refuses to become while killing them. The rain stopped 70 years ago, but the lesson remains for anyone willing to learn it. For anyone who understands that sometimes the story isn't about the shot you take, it's about the shot you don't take. And why, if you served, if you made those impossible choices, if you know what it means to hold the line when everything says run, share your story in the comments. The world needs to remember what made your generation great. Not the battles, the character, not the weapons, the values. Because those values more than any army won the war. And they're worth remembering, worth preserving, worth passing to the next generation before the men who carried them are all gone. The storm passed, the soldiers lived, the choice mattered. And somewhere in Bavaria, 3 German grandchildren who never knew they owe their lives to an American's mercy are teaching their own children about honor, about discipline, about the kind of character that transcends national borders and historical enmity. That's the real victory. Not Normandy, not Berlin, but this. The knowledge that humanity survived the worst humanity could do to itself, and came out the other side still believing in something bigger than hatred, still believing in doing the right thing, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That's what made America great, not the strongest weapons, the strongest values, and 2 boys from Montana and Brooklyn who refused to forget them even in hell, even in the storm.